Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and it's the 3rd of February 2024. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So apologies for missing yesterday's episode everyone, but as you'll notice, I'm doing a special Saturday episode to make up for it. So I guess without further ado, let's get into the news from yesterday mostly, or the day before, I guess you should say, the last 36 hours there. So the first bit of news was a kind of recap thread here from Tim Biker. Now, I don't think I covered this yet. No, I wouldn't have covered this yet because this happened yesterday. So this was basically an all-core devs call kind of recap again. But the most interesting part of the recap was that Tim mentioned in his thread that they're going to be setting a mainnet date or mainnet fork date for Dencun next week next week on Thursday's All Core Devs call. Now, the reason, obviously, that this is interesting is because, that will be the date that Dencun gets activated on Mainnet, and it'll be decided just less than a week from now, right? Next Thursday is less than a week from now. And I think that the fact that they're going to be deciding on that call, right, which is Feb 8th, and Holsky is forking on Feb 7th, means that we're not going to have to wait that extra week like I said we would, which means that we may see Dencun go live in basically early to mid-March instead of mid to late March, which is great. I mean, it's probably a week earlier than otherwise anticipated here, which is great to see, but we will know the exact date, obviously, next week. But this has been a long time coming, guys. I mean, it's been almost a year now since Chappella went live on the network. And Dencun was delayed, I guess, using that term loosely, from the expected November date to now March, but it's finally here, and it's finally only, 5 weeks away or whatever it is, whenever it gets scheduled there. So, and then, I think most of the L2s are actually ready for EIP 4844 at this stage as well. They've got all of their kind of ducks in a row. It's going to be curious to see which ones start using 4844 or start using blobs straight away, and which ones maybe wait a day or so, and it's going to be curious to see what that fee market looks like, because as I've described before, that fee market, the blob fee market, could get spammed with things like inscriptions, because it's this new thing for people to speculate on, right? And I'm just curious to see if that happens straight away, if it happens a week or two after, what's that, what effect is that going to have on what the roll-ups do? Are they going to store their data on blobs still, or will they just kind of change between blobs and core data on the fly? I don't even know if the L2 teams or the rollup teams have put that ability in, or put that functionality in to their code to allow them to do that. I'm sure it's not very hard to do that, but it might just add extra overhead. It might be hard to balance between the two, because you basically have to start speculating on when you should kind of post your data as core data versus posting it as blobs, and it gets messy, right? So we're not going to know until it goes live. I think that's the main concern right now, for me at least, is that I really hope that it's not just spam with inscription stuff out of some kind of speculative activity or something, because what that means is that the roll-ups won't be able to use it, or they'll use it and it'll just be more expensive, and those kind of, I guess, fee reductions that we expect on the roll-ups wouldn't flow down to users as quickly as we would like them to. But that really is just the nature of kind of a limited resource, right, where you can optimize it for certain use cases, and there are, concepts like local kind of fee markets and things like that, but at the end of the day, they can still get spammed. I use a term spammed kind of loosely here, but they can get spammed speculative activity, which drives out the thing that it was actually made for. So in the example of blobs, it could get spammed with inscriptions, even though blobs are made for rollups to store their data there, not for inscriptions. And it's kind of funny with the inscription stuff, because the blobs expire after 18 days, right? I think it's 18 days, which means they're temporary. And I at least thought that the whole point of inscriptions was that they don't expire, right? That they're actually permanent. That's why people get really excited about them with Bitcoin when it came to NFTs, where it was actually fully on chain, and it didn't expire there, or didn't get kind of lost in the noise there. But we're going to have to see what people kind of do with it there. But yeah, that's the latest update on Dencun. The thread, as usual, will be found in the YouTube description below for you to give it a read. It's got a bunch of information about other things, such as Verkle trees, and so on and so forth, and kind of specking out what the Petra upgrade is going to look like. It seems like all the Verkle tree stuff is going to be pushed to 2025, so the next upgrade is called Osaka, I believe, in 2025. So that will be the where the Verkle stuff gets pushed to. In terms of what's going to go into Petra, I mean, it's still in flux, right? But there is a bunch of things that will go in, such as EOF, which has been a long time coming, actually. This EOF has been punted 2 times now. I think it was supposed to go live as part of Chappella, but it didn't. And then it was supposed to go live as part of Dencun, and it didn't. So I think EOF should be ready for Petra by the end of the year here. But yeah, the Verkle stuff seems to be getting pushed out to 2025 because it probably won't be ready in time for Petra, which means that it would delay Petra from being able to be delivered by the end of this year into next year anyway. And it would just be a messy thing from there. But anyway, you can go give this a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. Now, of course, speaking about Verkle trees, we have another update here from Josh Rudolph, who tweeted today that there's a new Verkle testnet up. Stateless clients are not too far behind. So you can go visit this link. I'll link it in the YouTube description below to see the progress of, to see where all the links are, to kind of check on the progress of this testnet, all the relevant links. You can actually be part of this as well, I think. If you kind of go through these links here, you can look at the Explorer if you just want to kind of see what's going on here. But really, I mean, for most of us, this is probably rather meaningless to kind of look at this because we're not doing any of the deving and the testing. But the reason why I bring this up is because it's really great to see that this stuff is continuing to make a lot of progress here. And honestly, if you want to follow someone that is basically on top of all the Verkle tree stuff, you should definitely follow Josh here. I'll link his tweet in the YouTube description below. You can go follow him. But also Julian and I think Barnaby here, these three guys, I think they're working on Verkle trees. I know Julian has been working on it for quite a while now as part of like the Geth team here. Josh just works on it as part of, he's in the research and development department at the Ethereum Foundation. But yeah, Josh definitely the best follow when it comes to Verkle trees. And also, as I've discussed before, there's that kind of information site called verkle.info, which I'll link in the YouTube description below for you guys again, which has basically all the information that you could need about Verkle trees and statelessness. And as I said before, this is going to get probably pushed out to 2025. But as we go towards the end of the year, as kind of like Petra starts ossifying, then the devs and a lot of the chatter will move on to Verkle trees, and that will be the main theme of 2025. And Verkle trees give us so much, guys. It unlocks so much, as I've discussed before. It unlocks, potential L1 scalability benefits. It unlocks things like light clients, or it sets the groundwork for light clients. Statelessness and state expiry, and basically allows us to make a much more scalable chain while keeping the chain, easily runnable on consumer hardware. Like, that's the goal of Ethereum, obviously, and that's always been the goal of Ethereum. And we're basically getting towards that very soon. 2025 is not that far away now. This is something that has been in the works for quite a while. I don't know exactly how many years, but it's been a long time. I think Vitalik has blog posts about this going back as probably 2018, I would say. Maybe it could be earlier than that. I just don't remember exactly right now, but it has been a long time coming. This is not anything new. It's just that it is a big undertaking. It is a big task, and it is something that needed to be worked on and needed to be worked on properly for us to be able to kind of put this in, because it is a pretty major change to the network, or at least to the execution layer side of things from my knowledge here of how this all works. But it does give us a lot of benefits, so that's why we've been pursuing it. But anyway, you can go check out all this stuff for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so Buddha has shared a new update here on Twitter today saying, due to demand, Sonic has updated the EL client diversity website. The latest version allows you to simulate client distribution for each node operator and its effects on the total client distribution. This is really cool because, as I've said before, guys, if you actually just look at who the biggest node operators are, like Coinbase and Lido, if they switched off of the supermajority client, which is Geth, they would move the needle a lot here. Now, you can actually put hard numbers on this and actually simulate this yourself by playing around with this kind of website here. So if I go here and I kind of say, okay, well, I want to add Nethermind to this, and I want to slide it so that Geth is 50%, Coinbase is 50% Geth and 50% Nethermind. Now you can see what the total looks like. So, okay, let's start from the start again, actually. 100% Geth, what does the total look like? Well, Geth is at 72.8% here. So that's Coinbase at 100% Geth. So what would they have to switch off to get Geth below 66%? Not much. You can see here, to get Geth down to 65% on the overall network, Coinbase would only have to get rid of, I think, 28% of their Geth usage and basically use Nethermind or another client to do that. So really, I mean, if Coinbase switches off, we've basically solved this issue. That's how relatively easy this issue is to solve. And it also shows just how much of a market share Coinbase has here. They are the second largest staker. Obviously, Lido is larger at 32%, but Coinbase is at 15%, and they are the single largest entity by far. I think the next single largest entity behind them, obviously because Lido has 36 node operators. I think I said 38 the other day. It's actually 36. 36. They have 36 node operators. But yeah, Coinbase as a single entity, that's a single node operator, they are the biggest. They have 15%, almost 15% market share. The second, the third largest is Binance at 4%. So Coinbase is just way ahead here in terms of market share for a single node operator. And that's why, them switching off of this has such a large impact here. But you can kind of play around with this to your heart's content, really, with all the different node operators here. But if you're talking about moving the needle in a really big way, Coinbase and Lido are definitely the top two to watch here. But yeah, definitely go check out this site. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. I don't think Lido is actually listed here. I think they're probably in the unlisted entities section. And this is basically saying like kind of unknown, which... yeah, I mean, as I've discussed before, it's really hard to kind of get the actual coverage here. Like, okay, let me take a step back here for a second. I've discussed this before on the refuel, but basically the reason why it's so hard to know which client is being used is because there's not really any in-protocol way to know this. And as far as I know, none of the clients have flags inbuilt, or at least not all of them have flags inbuilt in order to signal which client that you're using here. So really, a lot of them are a lot of the data is based on network crawling, which is notoriously unreliable. And the second data set, which the client diversity website uses, is basically just asking the node operators what they're using. Now, there is an element of trust here. You're trusting that they're actually not using the client that they say they're not using. So, for example, if they're saying that they're not using Geth, you're trusting them. But, I mean, I don't really see any reason for them to lie, unless they, I don't know, wanted to hurt Ethereum in some way, but the problem with that logic is that they're actually hurting themselves by doing that. So it just doesn't seem like the incentives don't line up there. So there is a little bit of trust involved in that, but I don't think that it's a big deal there. And obviously the ultimate test of this would be if there was a bug in Geth, and we would see the network go absolutely haywire there. But we have seen kind of similar things recently with Nethermind having their bug and Besu having their bug, and then you can see what percentage of the network basically goes offline, and then that gives you a really, really good estimate, or basically the best you're going to get of what the makeup of the network looks like there. But we can't rely on that, right? We can't just say, okay, well, let's wait till the next bug and then we can kind of see what the network looks like. No, because what happens if that bug is in Geth? Like, not a good thing, right? As I've discussed before. So yeah, anyway, as I said, it's an imperfect thing, but it's the only data we have to work with. So that's the data we have to go off of. And we know for a fact that the bigger players out there use Geth. Like Coinbase, we know for a fact uses 100% Geth right now. That's not something that's debatable, I think. And with the lighter node operators, they're all very transparent. They tell us what they're using. Majority Geth still, I think, for most of them. And some of these other providers are also using Geth as well. But really, that's coming down, I think, in the next month or so. This is just basically going to be a solved issue. And then we're just going to be vigilant about it not creeping up again. And I don't think it will because, unless there's like... I don't know, like, let's just say, you go to a different client, and then what's the reason to switch back to Geth? Maybe the reason is that you saw better performance under Geth, and it materially kind of moves the needle here. Maybe it's not just like a 0.1% difference in your staking returns. It's 0.5% or something like that, which isn't actually the case from what I've seen, all the metrics that I've seen here. So other than that, I don't really see a reason to switch back other than maybe bugs happening. But then, again, bugs happening is like the whole reason why we want to make sure the client diversity is as diverse as possible, so that even if a bug happens, it's not really a big deal there. And as I said before, you can always have fallback clients, right? You can always have fallback nodes that either trigger automatically or require manual triggering. And really, at the end of the day, if it requires manual triggering, you could trigger it within like 10 minutes or less. Like that, you have a... Like as a large node operator through your DevOps pipeline, you basically have a standard operating procedure for this stuff already, where the right people are notified at no matter what time it is, doesn't matter if they're sleeping, and they're able to get online in under 10 minutes, and they're able to affect change that way. So yeah, but that's on, I guess, like Coinbase and the lighter node operators and other node operators to sort out. But they definitely have the tools at their disposal to do this. All right, moving on. So EigenDA has announced that it now works with Arbitrum Orbit. So thanks to AltLayer's fork of Arbitrum Nitro, rollup teams can now use EigenDA to scale Orbit chains far beyond the Ethereum block size limit without sacrificing decentralization. Now, of course, as you guys know, Arbitrum Orbit is basically Arbitrum's answer to Validium's, where... essentially, people can build Arbitrum Orbit chains and store their data elsewhere. Traditionally, it has been storing it as part of a data availability committee, like Arbitrum Nova, for example. But once EigenDA goes live, you will be able to essentially store your data as an Arbitrum Orbit chain on EigenDA, which, as I talked about not yesterday, the day before, I said that it's basically the gold standard of DA, in my opinion. Obviously not. The gold standard is Ethereum L1, but it's like the closest you'll get to the Ethereum L1 in terms of DA layers out there. But yes, it's not live yet, so obviously, I'm saying that kind of based on when it is live. But yeah, it's just great to see that Orbit chains are working with it here. And, I know I talked about this a lot the other day, but I do want to reiterate here that I do strongly believe that the DA stuff is a race to zero. Like, it's all going to come down to which DA chain offers the cheapest cost, because the entire purpose of using a DA chain is to lower your costs, right? So if you can get them as low as possible, then you're going to go with that chain. So it's going to be very, very curious to see like how cheap EigenDA is compared to Celestia, is compared to Avail, is compared to other DA layers, and then also as compared to Ethereum L1, because there are certain chains out there that I would expect to never actually use off-chain DA. So for example, Arbitrum 1, if they started using off-chain DA, I'd be very concerned, because Arbitrum 1 and I guess like OP Mainnet and Base, and a few others out there, they're supposed to be proper rollups, right? They're not supposed to use off-chain DA. They're supposed to use Ethereum L1 DA, and L1 DA is actually becoming more abundant, obviously with blobs going live with EIP 4844, and then working towards increasing the sizes of blobs and increasing the number of blobs, and then working towards full dank sharding. So in my opinion, if you are a big chain, if you have a lot of DeFi activity, you should not be using these off-chain DA solutions. It's just strictly less secure, and you can afford to be using Ethereum L1 for DA. But at the same time, I ponder this question a lot of, okay, well, what happens when there's a community governance kind of module behind these rollups, and they decentralize. They're in stage 2, and then the token holders are like, well, why are we spending so much on Ethereum L1 DA when we could use off-chain DA and then keep a lot of these fees for ourselves, sort of thing? Let's just say there's something like ARB staking, and then if you stake your ARB, you get like a share of the fee revenue, and then obviously the fee revenue would go up if you weren't spending a lot on securing yourself with Ethereum L1 DA. So I wonder what the community would do in that respect, because at the end of the day, you're giving up a lot of security for a little bit of profit. And that, to me, is not a long-term sustainable or secure or reliable way of doing things. And that, to me, is not the right path for certain chains. Like, I feel like the biggest L2s should never use off-chain DA. The biggest L2s, and biggest here, I mean to... So if I'm talking about like biggest in terms of like value settled and value kind of on the L2, I feel like they should never use off-chain DA. They should always use Ethereum L1 DA, and they can afford to, because they are the biggest, right? They are the ones that are generating the most fee revenue. They can afford to use Ethereum L1 DA instead of going off-chain. But as I said, there are certain circumstances where that kind of goes out the window, because then it just depends on how selfish are the token holders, like how much do they want to get for themselves. So, and if they're able to get that extra fee revenue for themselves, maybe they'll do it, even if it's just like a short-term thing. So again, it comes back to like what the community actually is aligned on, and in terms of sustainability, and what they actually see as valuable. Like, to me, I see the obvious kind of value in a roll-up, especially one that has a lot of DeFi activity, not storing its data off-chain. And when if it's storing its data off-chain, it technically isn't a roll-up anymore. Well, it literally isn't a roll-up anymore, and as well as technically. Yeah, there's economics involved here. It's not just a technical thing. It's the economics of it. There are different parties involved. There are DAOs involved. So it can get a little bit messy. But then you can kind of say, okay, well, then ultimately the goal would be to have the enshrined ZK EVM, when we eventually have that on Ethereum L1, be like the ultra secure. It's not technically an L2, but like be the ultra secure L2. I mean, I struggle to call it an L2, because from my understanding, an enshrined ZK EVM is tightly coupled with the protocol, with the layer 1 protocol, which means that it technically is not a layer 2, because it can't actually operate independently of the L1 protocol. It is at the mercy of the L1 protocol's governance, and it can't, from my understanding, store its data off-chain either, because it won't work with the protocol. The protocol rules won't allow it to do that. But there are different designs here. Remains to be seen how this is all going to shake out, but still, I think that off-chain DA has a purpose for a lot of use cases, such as low-value use cases, such as things like payments, for example, like just settling low-value payments. And then you can kind of bundle that up, and you can still put that on Ethereum L1. Maybe for example, you settle to Ethereum L1 once a day. You do your payments thing. And then once every 24 hours, you put, you roll up those transactions, right? And you settle that onto Ethereum L1, and that's just one transaction, and that's just one fee you have to pay, rather than doing it like every minute or something, or every block even, right? But for other use cases, it makes a lot more sense to just use Ethereum L1 DA because you're settling high value transactions there. But anyway, that's enough talk about DA. I know I talked a lot about it the other day. I've got 10 minutes left here, and there are a few things I wanted to go through with regards to L2s in particular. So you guys know two of my favorite websites for tracking L2 growth are growthepie.xyz and L2Beat. So I just wanted to remind you guys about these websites if you wanted to go view them. But the reason why I'm bringing them up as well today is because basically the L2 growth is still going very, very strong. So if we go through each of the kind of metrics here, which I'm going to asterisk this and add some nuance here, that all of these metrics are flawed. All of these metrics are imperfect. They should not be taken in a vacuum. They should not be taken as any kind of signal without diving deeper into why these things are happening. But at the same time, if you take them all together, it does begin to paint a nice picture here. And if you take them over longer periods of time as well, at least a year, like I wouldn't actually be looking at anything shorter than a year, then you get to see better metrics here. But like, let's look at active addresses, for example. You can see over the last year, things have been growing really, really nicely. If you see it stacked, it's basically been up only. ZK Sync era has a lot here, but then, as I said, there is nuance. You can keep in mind that ZK Sync hasn't done their token yet, so there's probably a lot of airdrop farming going on here. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I actually don't think that's a bad thing at all, because people said that there was a lot of airdrop farming going on with Arbitrum, and then Arbitrum continued to grow after they did their token. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but it's good to keep in mind that there is, definitely a lot of airdrop farming on chains that haven't done tokens here yet. But regardless, the other chains are continuing to grow on this metric as well. Transaction count as well. I mean, transaction count is imperfect for other reasons, such as the fact that not every L2 does transactions the same way, and gas is metered differently. So comparing the L2s to each other is probably not the best thing to do. But as a trajectory, they seem to be going up nicely over time. But what's really been interesting is to see stablecoins going up only basically on these L2s. And why this is interesting is because stablecoins are basically the money of the crypto ecosystem. So the more stablecoins you have on your chain, I think the more real users are on that chain, right? Because no one's speculating on stablecoins, right? Like by their very nature, they're non-speculative vehicles. But people are using stablecoins to speculate on other things, right? People are using stablecoins to do things like payments on L2s because it's cheaper. So to see this continue to go up only across the board, basically, I think is really, really great. And you can see here that Arbitrum leads with $2.1 billion, I think, OP Mainnet at $600 million, Base at $300 million, and then you got the kind of long tail there as well. And some of them aren't even highlighted here, but you can see that there. But yeah, there are so many other metrics here on growthepie.xyz that you can go check out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so here. L2Beat, I think, as I've said before, most of the value of L2Beat comes from a lot of the other stuff outside of the metrics. They do have various metrics here. But I think for L2Beat, what I like to look at is the stuff like, the risk analysis that they have. So if you go here, you can actually, as I've described before, see all the L2s compared to each other and see all the risks associated with each of them. I'm a really big fan of the liveness page, and also tracking like the 30-day anomalies of the liveness and seeing kind of the L2s compared to each other. Really big fan of the finality page as well, because you get to actually see what the time to finality looks like for each of these L2s, and they've got like notes here around this, and they're going to be adding more L2s over time. And also the activity tab's pretty cool too, because it goes back pretty far. Like it goes back, I think, to 2019 even, and then L2s start coming onto the scene, in about like 2021, obviously with Arbitrum and OP Mainnet launching back then, and then it's just continued to kind of grow up here. And you can actually see this big red spike in activity. This was when inscriptions were kind of taking off on the L2s very briefly. And I remember saying at the time that it was a very brief thing, and that's why I like that with Grow the Pie, they average out the metrics here. So if you actually look at kind of maybe transaction counts, you can see inscriptions. This was inscriptions here around here, but this is 7-day rolling average, so it kind of looks less pronounced than it does on L2Beat here. I don't think they average out to 7 days. I think that they just kind of look at the last 7 days and kind of measure it against each other here. But yeah, I mean, there are different ways to measure these metrics. And then obviously you can see metrics such as like the max daily TPS of each of these networks and so on and so forth. So yeah, those two sites, definitely go check them out. I'll link them in the YouTube description below. And then last up here was the Ultrasound Money website. You know, I know the Ultrasound Money meme has fallen out of favor in recent times. A lot of people are saying that it is a meme that we shouldn't be kind of perpetuating anymore. It's immature. It's something that is rather meaningless, blah, 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 so on and so forth. As I've said to you guys before, I think the Ultrasound Money meme is a really good insider Ethereum meme. It's not something that we should perpetuate outside of Ethereum. And I don't think we have been doing that really, but definitely I still think it describes exactly what kind of Ethereum is, right? It is ultrasound money because of the fact that we are net deflationary since the merge, and it seems like we're always going to be net deflationary. I mean, I know I say that now, but if you look at this, we need to basically go, like, I mean, if you look here, since, I guess, like, we begin net deflation, not since the merge, I should be technically correct here, since Jan 2023, so over a year now, and it has really just been down only. Yes, there's been periods where it starts to creep up again when the gas fees are relatively low, but we burn, as I've described it before, we burn ETH much easier than we issue it, right? It's much easier to burn ETH than it is to issue it because of the fact that even when gas fees are low, we're still burning ETH, right? Like even at 17 Gwei, which is below the ultrasound barrier, which is the current gas price, we're still burning ETH. And what do you think is going to happen in the bull market, like the full-blown retail bull market? What's going to happen is that we're going to burn a lot of ETH in a short period of time, and then even if for like 2 years we aren't net deflationary, as in we're not above the ultrasound barrier, it won't matter because we'll have burnt so much during the really active period that it makes up for the fact that we're not going to be burning as much during that time. So as I said, it's much easier to burn ETH than it is to issue it. But the reason I bring up the Ultrasound Money website is not for the deflationary stuff, but it's for the fact that it by far still has the best information about the use of the Ethereum L1. And that information doesn't just include the burn across different intervals. It also includes like which apps and kind of like which contracts are causing the most ETH to be burned. And the reason why I like looking at this is because if you look at over the last 30 days, remember when I used to show this and you could see that the top burners were not L2s? Like the top 10, there weren't L2s really in there. Now in the top 5, there are 2 L2s. Both Arbitrum and Linear are in the top 5 for ETH burned, only behind Uniswap, ETH transfers, and Tether, which are the obvious ones because Uniswap's the most used DEX. ETH transfers, ETH transfers are the thing that happens most on the Ethereum network, and Tether is the most popular stablecoin. Right, but then you can see that there's Arbitrum, Linear, ZK Sync Error, and a few others down here, like Optimism down here as well. So this has evolved over time. But why I like looking at this is because it basically fits in with the thesis that a lot of us have been talking about, where we said that L1 block space is just going to be used by L2s. Now I know, of course, that this is going to change post 4844 because obviously the fees are going to be lower, and then that means they're going to be burning less ETH and they're going to not be in the leaderboard as much. But the whole point of scaling out and the whole point of giving more space for these L2s is that we believe that it's going to increase the scalability, increase the activity, which is going to, on net, if you kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? If you kind of take it as all together, basically, it adds up to this again, and it basically leads to a stronger burn here. So yeah, it's another reason why I like the Ultrasound Money website. They also track the total value secured by the Ethereum network, and things like NFT leaderboard, and also the monetary premium of Ethereum, such as how much is being staked, how much is in DeFi, how much is being burned, validator rewards as well, like issuance tips and MEV estimate, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of really great information on this website besides the burn stuff. So yeah, if you haven't checked it out recently, you should definitely go check it out there. But I think that's going to be it for today because I'm at time now. So I hope you enjoyed today's special Saturday episode. I know you guys have been asking for another episode with Eric, so another Daily Gwei Drive-Through episode with Eric Connor. Just scheduling stuff. I'm gonna ask him if he wants to come on and like when he's free so that we can do another episode. I know it's been a while, it's been months, and I know we used to say that we wouldn't rug again, but it seems like we have at this point. But I mean, yeah, we definitely still have a lot to talk about, so I'm going to ask him and see if he's free for an episode anytime soon. So no promises, but hopefully we can do one soon there. But I think on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all on Monday. Thanks, everyone.